this lesson, we're going to be talking about cardstock and pattern paper and several different ways you can use them. So on this layout here that I've done, you can see that I have used cardstock to die cut these flowers, and I've also backed them with pattern paper, so that's two different ways here. Then we've done some layering here, and these are actually with journaling cards, not even pattern paper. And then we've done additional work with pattern paper just by fussy cutting out these flowers and layering them with some foam adhesive. For the first technique, you can see here that I've die cut some flowers. You can use this on a digital die cutting machine. You can do this on a manual die cutting machine. These are just a bit of a floral kind of spiral pattern. And so that's one way you can use your cardstock. You can also do that with pattern paper. And the best thing to do with them is to back them with some pattern paper. So I have some different pieces here, and that they're all different patterns. And this is a great way to incorporate different patterns and colors into your project. So all you really need is a tape runner and some scraps of paper. And you just want to flip it onto the reverse side and then add a lot of adhesive. You just add adhesive all over the back. And then start working with whatever patterns you want to use. So I like to vary the size and the pattern here. So these ones are smaller actually. You grabbed the wrong one. So I have different colors and different patterns. And when you use a double-sided pattern paper, you can see that you get 2 for the price of 1. So you don't actually have to cut out 4 sheets of paper to do this. So once you've decided what side you want to use, you just simply adhere it to the back where you've put your glue, and then you just keep working around your design. And I try to change up the pattern and the color so that you don't have a lot of pink in one area or black in one area. And that way when you flip it over, you can see you have a completely different pattern to your die cut shape. I'm just going to keep working this through. And I have smaller die cut pieces here, so I'm going to fill in some of these areas with these tiny little pieces. And again, I try to vary the color of them and the pattern so that you don't have a lot of the same color in one area. And you can also tell how you're changing up your colors by looking at the pattern you have on the back side. So I can kind of tell I don't have 2 of the same right beside each other. So you can kind of see what you're doing without having to flip it over back and forth over and over again. So it's really a great way to use your scraps if you have a bunch of scrap paper like I do at home. It's a great way to use all of those little pieces up. I've cut these out with a digital die cutting machine, but you could very easily just take a piece of paper, line it up with some scissors, and then trim around the edge to get the same kind of effect. So you don't have to have all these little pre-made cut pieces. It just helps a little bit, but it's totally fine if you do it a different way. And the best part about this is you could do the exact same thing 10 times over, and it would look completely different. All you do is change your paper. So that's why I think pattern paper is one of my favorite embellishments to use, is because you can use it over and over again many different ways, and it looks different every single time. Okay, so you can see here we have the completed die cut filled in. There's the front and the back side. And now it's just perfect to add onto your page. On my project here, you can see I added several different ones in different sizes and just stitched them down for a fun effect. For the third technique, I'm going to show you how you can use journaling cards to layer like pattern paper on your page. So there's some really pretty ones in this piece of pattern paper here, and you can see it's double-sided, so you can actually use both sides, and I did on my project. And there's some really great patterns. So if you have a piece of journaling paper like this, where you may not like the words, but you like the patterns that are on the journaling cards, you can quite easily just cut it apart and use it like pattern paper. So I'm going to do that. And I've done that on my project already. So I'm just going to trim off a few here that I want to use. You can see here that I have just cut out this paper here from the journaling cards and just use it as a layer behind my photo. And I've also cut out the second one here and covered up the hooray part because I really love the gold dots, but I don't want that part to show. And I've just used that on my project as a piece of paper. So although you may not like the sentiment or the words on your journaling cards, you can use them just like any other pattern paper. For this next technique, we're going to fussy cut some flowers out of this pattern paper. For me, when I see a pattern paper like this, it's so pretty, but sometimes it's overwhelming. So I like to cut that apart and make it smaller. So as you can see on my layout here, I have cut apart some flowers and just layered them really easily. And you can get so many flowers out of one sheet of pattern paper. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cut some of these out. And even these little edge pieces can be used as a great layering piece. So don't throw any little piece away. I'm going to cut a piece off and then start trimming. And when I trim around the flower, I like to leave a tiny little edge around the outside of the pattern just to kind of unify the whole thing. That way I don't cut into the design necessarily. I can also cut off parts that I don't want and you won't know that they were ever there. So I'm just going to go through with my scissors. And the best thing is to use a really sharp pair of scissors for this so you don't rip your paper. Another thing you can do is cut out the same design over again and layer it with some foam adhesive to make a 3D-like effect. And you can cut off whatever you want or keep it together. You can see something like this is great to just tuck beside your photo, and you'd never know that you didn't cut the whole piece out. You just have part of the flower showing. If you add a little foam adhesive, it looks like it's a 3D floral embellishment. You can add some epoxy dots or some brads or even some buttons to the center, and it's like your own homemade shape. So for this technique, we are going to just simply layer pattern paper. So I have some scraps here left over from my project, and I'm going to use that to build a mat kind of behind my photo. So I have some leftover the journaling cards here, and I actually use these as part of paper to tuck in behind my project. So you can see by layering different colors and patterns and mixing them up that you can create a fun little focal point for your photo. You know, you have a white pattern backed with a black pattern. If you mix it up, it's really, really easy way to use different patterns of paper in a simple way. And that's 5 easy ways to use cardstock and pattern paper on your projects.